Hi Year 11 and welcome to another Power and Conflict quick summary video. So this one today is going to be on Storm on the Island by Seamus Heaney. So in a nutshell, this poem is about the power of nature, the way in which that impacts humans, but also the way in which conflict impacts humans as well, because there is a literal interpretation of this poem and then there is a symbolic interpretation of this poem. So if we start off with the literal, the poem opens with this confident sense of community. We get the use of "we are prepared" as the first line, creating a sense of collective experience as the islanders prepare to endure the coming storm. We are prepared, we build our houses squat. So there's this real sense of confidence in how they're approaching the oncoming storm. However, this then changes as we move through to the Volta on line 11, where there's a moment of realisation, but that key connective, there are no trees, no natural shelter. And from this point onwards, whilst it's all one stanza, perhaps reflecting the idea of an island, while it is all one stanza, there is this sense of almost like a second half, which in the second half, the language becomes increasingly violent and military. There's lots of lexis, words that create a sense of kind of fighting, conflict, but there's also a really military semantic field through words like blast, pummel, salvo, bombarded, most of which are plosive if we think about the way that they sound as well. And that suggests obviously the formidable and unpredictable power of the storm. It highlights the fact that there is such a juxtaposition in the actual mood, from one of confidence to then one of somewhat ambiguous, but it's, in my interpretation, is that it's fearful on the one hand, but it's also a sense of kind of like awestruck. So the last line, strange, it is a huge nothing that we fear. I think there's a real ambiguity there that isn't completely terrified, but is more in awe at the power of nature. Very, very similar to the feelings that we see the speaker in the prelude encountering with nature. So that slide, the last slide, was the literal meaning, and this is the symbolic meaning. So this poem is an allegory for the ongoing political troubles in Northern Ireland, which began in the 1960s. The storm can be seen as a metaphor for the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, and the violence that Ireland as a country had to encounter and prepare for during that time. So if we think of the symbolic meaning of the poem, the storm, as the IRA, suggests that there's this sense within the community that they were unprepared for the violence that this group would wreak upon themselves and, as we've already said, their society. However, it's absolutely fine if you find that quite confusing, just to think about that literal power of nature that's seen within the poem. So some key terms and comparison poems for this one, I would suggest going with some more linguistic and structural terms. So structural, the volta, that change or shift in mood or tone that we see on line 11, as has been already talked about. And then semantic fields. There are a couple of different semantic fields within this poem, and a reminder that a semantic field means a group of words which link by meaning. So we've talked about the military semantic field. There's also some natural semantic fields. And we can look at semantic fields of confidence, juxtaposed with semantic fields of like fear or realization. And that's a really good term that I love using in language analysis. So which poem could we compare to? Obviously, this is one of our very explicit nature poems. So thinking about comparing it to Exposure, which is also about a collective experience. The soldiers who are obviously losing their lives in battle, but not due to fighting, but due to the weather. The Prelude, that idea of the risk of kind of underestimating nature and that individual experience. Obviously in the Prelude it's just one like boy by himself, whereas in this it's a group of people. And we could also compare it to Kamikaze, with that idea that the power that nature has on humans, both the positive and the maybe slightly more awe-inspiring nature of nature, but aspect of nature. Lots of other poems that we could look at as well, but definitely in terms of that idea of like the power of nature, the idea of how conflict is created and impacts on those exposed to it, like in Exposure. Hopefully that's been helpful, guys. As always, if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to do next or what video you'd like to see next, please do let me know. A reminder that we do have this final slide, which is no credit to me and all thanks to the wonderful Mr. Stuart Pryke. And this might be something that you want to print off or take a picture of to have for your own revision. As always, if this has been helpful, then please feel free to like and subscribe to the Cedars YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone. Bye.